A millionaire, blinded by his ambition and pride, abandons the woman he once loved and their son, believing that wealth and success are all that matter. Years go by, and his life is filled with empty accolades and loneliness. But one fateful day, he walks into a hotel and sees her standing with another man. The sight of her with someone else stirs something deep within him, a regret he can no longer ignore. What happens next will force him to confront the past he tried to leave behind and question everything he thought he knew about love, family, and success. Don't miss this emotional journey. Subscribe now to see how it all unfolds. Ethan Grayson was the kind of man whose presence lit up a room. Sharp-featured and full of charm, he carried an air of quiet confidence. But in those early days, confidence didn't pay the rent. He was a struggling entrepreneur with big dreams and a fire that burned brighter than his reality could hold. His girlfriend, Amelia Carter, was the anchor to his storm, always there to steady him when his ambitions threatened to consume him. They met during college in the bustling city of Chicago. Amelia worked part-time as a barista while attending night classes, studying hospitality management. Ethan, fresh out of a business lecture, had walked into her cafe, drowning in frustration over a failed pitch. "One black coffee, no sugar," he had muttered. Amelia, with her disarming smile and kind eyes, served him more than just coffee that day. She gave him hope. Their love blossomed quickly, built on shared late-night talks, dreams of a better future, and Amelia's unwavering belief in Ethan's potential. Even as Ethan struggled to get his startup off the ground, Amelia never doubted him. She worked extra shifts to help with his bills and sacrificed her own comforts to support his goals. But as time went on, the pressure began to mount. Ethan's tech company, Grayson Dynamics, started to gain traction, attracting the attention of investors. The first big break came when a venture capitalist agreed to fund his idea. With the money came meetings in high-rise buildings, tailored suits, and invitations to exclusive galas. Suddenly, Ethan was no longer the underdog fighting for survival. Amelia noticed the shift almost immediately. Ethan's phone buzzed constantly with calls and emails. He began canceling their weekly movie nights, missing dinner dates, and talking endlessly about his plans to make it big. She felt him slipping away, and though she tried to hold on, his ambition was like a river pulling him downstream, away from her. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at her job, Amelia prepared a simple dinner, roast chicken, Ethan's favorite. She waited for him, glancing at the clock every few minutes. By the time he walked through the door, it was past midnight. His tie was askew, and his eyes were tired, but alive with the thrill of success. "I did it, Amelia," he said, ignoring the cold dinner on the table. "Grayson Dynamics just secured a $10 million investment." "That's amazing, Ethan," she replied, forcing a smile. "But what about us? You've been so distant lately." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Amelia, you don't understand. This is everything I've worked for. I can't afford distractions right now." "Distractions?" Her voice cracked. "Is that what I am to you? A distraction?" He looked at her, guilt flickering across his face, but it was quickly replaced by resolve. "I didn't mean it like that. It's just, I need to focus. You deserve someone who can give you more than half their attention, and right now, I can't be that person." Amelia's heart shattered, but she refused to beg. "Ethan, we've been through so much together. Don't throw it all away because of money and status." But his mind was made up. He believed that letting her go was the right thing to do, a clean break to save her from the pain of being second to his career. "I'm sorry, Amelia," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "You'll thank me one day." And just like that, Ethan walked out of her life, leaving behind the woman who had been his greatest supporter and, unknowingly, his unborn child. Amelia sat on the edge of her bed, clutching a photograph of her and Ethan taken during happier times. She traced the edges of his smile with her finger, her vision blurred by tears. The pain of his departure felt like an open wound, raw and relentless. But as the weeks turned into months, Amelia discovered that heartbreak didn't wait for anyone to heal. It demanded resilience. The first few weeks after Ethan left were the hardest. Amelia felt like a ghost, moving through her days in a haze of grief and disbelief. But life didn't allow her the luxury of wallowing. When she discovered she was pregnant, her heartbreak was eclipsed by the realization that she would soon become a mother. Amelia was terrified. How could she raise a child on her own? The enormity of the task ahead overwhelmed her, but the fluttering life within her reminded her that she wasn't truly alone. She decided then and there that she would give her baby everything Ethan had walked away from: love, stability, and unwavering support. 9 months later, Jamie Carter was born. From the moment she held him in her arms, Amelia knew she would move mountains for him. He had Ethan's dark hair and piercing blue eyes, a constant reminder of the man who had abandoned them. But Jamie was hers, and that was all that mattered. Amelia's days became a blur of work and motherhood. She took on 3 jobs to make ends meet: a morning shift at a bakery, an afternoon cleaning houses, and an evening waitressing at a local diner. Her body ached, and her sleep was fragmented, but she refused to let exhaustion win. Jamie was a bright, curious child who brought joy to even the most challenging days. He loved sitting at the kitchen table while Amelia prepared dinner, peppering her with questions about the world. "Mama, why don't I have a daddy like the other kids?" Jamie asked one evening, his big blue eyes filled with innocent curiosity. Amelia froze, her hands gripping the knife she'd been using to chop vegetables. She forced a smile and knelt beside him. "Sometimes families look different, sweetheart. But I love you enough for both a mommy and a daddy, okay?" Jamie nodded, satisfied for the moment. But Amelia knew the question would come up again. How long could she keep the truth from him? While Amelia struggled to build a life for her and Jamie, Ethan thrived in his world of wealth and luxury. Grayson Dynamics had become one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country, earning Ethan a spot on Forbes' 30 Under 30 list. He attended extravagant galas, rubbed shoulders with CEOs and politicians, and dated women who looked like they'd stepped out of fashion magazines. But beneath the polished surface, Ethan felt a hollow ache that no amount of money or success could fill. Nights in his penthouse were quiet and lonely, the silence broken only by the occasional hum of his phone. He told himself he had no regrets, but deep down, he couldn't forget the look in Amelia's eyes the night he left her. One rainy evening, Ethan found himself flipping through old photographs. He paused on one of him and Amelia, taken during their first anniversary. They were sitting on a park bench, laughing, their faces flushed from the cold. He traced her image with his thumb, a pang of guilt piercing through him. "Get a grip, Grayson," he muttered, tossing the photograph into a drawer. "That's the past." Meanwhile, Amelia's hard work began to pay off. After years of balancing multiple jobs, she landed a position as an event manager at an upscale hotel in downtown Chicago. It was a role that finally allowed her to showcase her organizational skills and creative flair. The hotel became her sanctuary, a place where she could momentarily set aside her struggles and focus on her career. She quickly gained a reputation for her attention to detail and her ability to handle high-pressure situations with grace. Jamie, now 8 years old, was thriving as well. He excelled in school, his curious nature earning him the admiration of his teachers. Amelia made sure to be present for every milestone, from school plays to soccer games, even if it meant sacrificing sleep. One evening, as Amelia tucked Jamie into bed, he looked up at her with a mischievous grin. "Mama, when I grow up, I'm going to be rich and buy you a big house so you don't have to work so much." Amelia laughed, her heart swelling with pride. "I don't need a big house, sweetheart. I just need you to be happy." Though life wasn't easy, Amelia found solace in the small victories. She had built a stable home for her son, surrounded by love and laughter. But no matter how far she'd come, the shadows of her past lingered. Unbeknownst to her, those shadows were about to collide with her present in a way she never could have imagined. Amelia worked in the Grand Haven Hotel. It was a towering masterpiece of modern luxury, nestled in the heart of downtown Chicago. Its gleaming glass facade reflected the city's skyline, a beacon for the elite. For Amelia, it was more than just her workplace. It was the symbol of her resilience. She had worked tirelessly to climb the ranks, proving her worth at every turn. This particular week, the hotel was buzzing with activity. It was hosting the annual Global Tech Summit, a prestigious event that drew some of the biggest names in the industry. As the lead event manager, Amelia was in charge of ensuring every detail was flawless. "Amelia, the keynote speaker just confirmed his arrival for tomorrow," said Sophie, her assistant, handing her a clipboard. "Good. Let's double-check the seating arrangements and make sure the catering team knows the timing," Amelia replied, her voice calm but authoritative. What she didn't know was that one of the event's star attendees was none other than Ethan Grayson. Ethan strode into the Grand Haven lobby, his tailored suit fitting him like a second skin. At 35, he exuded the confidence of a man who had conquered the world. But even with his success, there was an unease in his chest he couldn't shake. This event was just another box to tick, another opportunity to showcase Grayson dynamics. As he approached the check-in desk, a hotel staff member greeted him warmly. "Mr. Grayson, welcome to the Grand Haven. Your suite is ready for you." Ethan nodded, barely registering the words. His mind was elsewhere, preoccupied with the usual stream of business thoughts. He stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the penthouse floor. Just as the doors were closing, a voice called out, "Hold the elevator!" Ethan instinctively pressed the button to keep the doors open. A woman stepped in, her arms full of paperwork. She muttered a quick, "Thank you," without looking up. It wasn't until the elevator began its ascent that Ethan stole a glance at her. Something about her seemed familiar, the way her dark hair framed her face, the graceful way she moved despite her load. When she finally looked up, her eyes locked with his, and time seemed to freeze. "Amelia?" Her eyes widened in shock. For a moment, she couldn't speak, the air between them thick with unspoken history. "Ethan," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. The elevator dinged, breaking the tension as it reached her floor. Amelia stepped out quickly, clutching her papers like a shield. "Amelia, wait!" Ethan called after her, stepping out as well. She turned to face him, her professional demeanor snapping into place. "I'm sorry, Mr. Grayson. I have work to do." "Amelia, it's me," he said, his voice softer now. "Can we talk?" "There's nothing to talk about," she replied, her tone clipped. Without waiting for a response, she walked away, leaving Ethan standing in the hallway, stunned. Amelia's hands trembled as she reached her office and closed the door behind her. She leaned against it, her mind racing. Of all the hotels in Chicago, why did he have to come here? The memories she had buried for years threatened to resurface. She thought of Jamie, of the life she had built without Ethan. There was no way she was going to let him disrupt everything now. Ethan, meanwhile, couldn't shake the encounter. He sat in his suite, staring out at the city lights, his thoughts a chaotic swirl of regret and curiosity. Amelia's face had been etched in his mind for years, but seeing her again was different. She was more confident now, more composed, and there was a strength in her that hadn't been there before. He needed answers. Why was she here? What had happened to her after he left? Did she still think about him the way he thought about her? The next evening, Ethan attended the summit's cocktail reception in the hotel's grand ballroom. The space was immaculate, a testament to Amelia's meticulous planning. As he sipped his drink, his eyes scanned the crowd, searching for her. When he finally spotted her, she wasn't alone. Amelia was talking to a man, tall, confident, with an easy smile. The man leaned in close, whispering something that made her laugh. Ethan felt a pang of jealousy stab through him. He clenched his glass, his mind racing with questions. Who was this man? He decided to find out. Later that evening, Ethan approached Amelia as she was overseeing the final arrangements for the next day's keynote speech. "Amelia," he said, his voice steady. She turned, her expression neutral. "Mr. Grayson, is there something I can help you with?" "We need to talk," he said firmly. "I'm working," she replied, her tone cold. "This can't wait," Ethan insisted. "Please." Amelia sighed, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Fine, 5 minutes." He followed her to a quiet corner of the ballroom. "Why are you here?" she asked, crossing her arms. "I could ask you the same thing," he countered. "What are you doing at this hotel?" "I work here," she said simply. "Not that it's any of your business." Ethan hesitated, then asked the question that had been gnawing at him. "Who's the guy you were talking to earlier?" Amelia's eyes narrowed. "Liam? He's a colleague and a friend. Again, not your business." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "I'm just trying to understand, Amelia." "There's nothing to understand," she snapped. "You made your choice years ago, Ethan. You don't get to waltz back into my life and ask questions." Her words hit him like a slap, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt truly powerless. As Amelia walked away, Ethan realized two things. He couldn't let her go again, and he needed to find out the truth about her life, no matter what it took. Ethan couldn't focus on the summit's agenda the next day. His thoughts were consumed by Amelia and the mysterious man she had been speaking to. The life he had imagined she might be living, a quiet, solitary one like his own, was clearly far from reality. That evening, he returned to the hotel's lounge, hoping to see her again. Instead, he saw the man. Liam was seated at the bar, chatting casually with a few other guests. Ethan observed him for a moment, noting his confident demeanor and the ease with which he interacted with others. There was no denying it. Liam seemed like a man who had everything Ethan didn't. Unable to help himself, Ethan approached the bar. "Liam, right?" he said, extending a hand. Liam turned, surprised but polite. "Yes. And you are?" "Ethan Grayson," he said, shaking Liam's hand. "I saw you at the summit. Impressive insights during the panel discussion earlier." Liam smiled. "Thanks, Ethan. I appreciate that. Are you in the tech world too?" "Something like that," Ethan replied, keeping his tone casual. "So, how do you know Amelia?" The question seemed to catch Liam off guard, but he recovered quickly. "We work together. She's one of the best event managers in the city, keeps everything running smoothly." "Just work colleagues, then?" Ethan pressed, his tone light but probing. Liam chuckled, clearly picking up on the subtext. "Amelia and I are good friends, Ethan. Nothing more." Ethan nodded, his shoulders relaxing slightly. But before he could ask anything further, Liam added, "Though if I'm being honest, any man would be lucky to have her. She's incredible." The words landed like a punch to Ethan's gut. He forced a smile, thanked Liam for the conversation, and retreated to his suite. Meanwhile, Amelia was in her small office on the second floor, reviewing the final details for the summit's closing ceremony. She tried to focus, but her encounter with Ethan the night before lingered in her mind. Seeing him again had been a shock she hadn't been prepared for. As much as she hated to admit it, a part of her was still angry. Angry at the way he had left, at the years she had spent picking up the pieces of her life without him. But another part of her felt something else, something she refused to name. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. "Come in," she called, expecting Sophie or another staff member. Instead, it was Liam. "Hey," he said, stepping inside. "You've been working non-stop. Thought you could use a break." He handed her a cup of coffee, just the way she liked it, black with a splash of cream. "Thanks, Liam," she said, managing a small smile. He sat across from her, leaning back in the chair. "So, are we going to talk about the elephant in the room?" Amelia raised an eyebrow. "What elephant?" Liam smirked. "The one wearing a tailored suit and always staring at you like you're the only person in the world." She sighed, setting her coffee down. "There's nothing to talk about. Ethan and we're ancient history." "Doesn't look that way to me," Liam said gently. "He's clearly still hung up on you." Amelia shook her head. "It doesn't matter. Whatever we had ended years ago, I've moved on." "Have you?" Liam asked, his tone soft but pointed. Amelia hesitated, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Jamie's babysitter. "Jamie's asking for me," she said, standing abruptly. "Thanks for the coffee, Liam. I need to go." Ethan, unaware of her departure, spent the evening wrestling with his emotions. He had thought about reaching out to her before, but fear and pride had always held him back. Now, seeing her again, he realized how much he had lost. The next morning, he made a decision. If Amelia wouldn't talk to him willingly, he would find another way to reconnect. Amelia arrived home late that night, greeted by Jamie's excited hug. "Mama, guess what I did today?" he exclaimed, holding up a drawing of a rocket ship. "Wow, Jamie, that's amazing," she said, kneeling to his level. "Miss Clara said I'm really good at art," Jamie added proudly. "You are," Amelia said, kissing his forehead. "Now, it's bedtime. Go brush your teeth." As Jamie ran off, Amelia sat on the couch, exhaustion settling over her. But her thoughts drifted to Ethan once again. What did he want? Why now? She shook her head, determined not to let him disrupt her life. She had worked too hard to build something stable for Jamie, and she wasn't going to let anyone, especially Ethan, jeopardize that. The morning sunlight poured into the Grand Haven ballroom as Amelia directed her team, ensuring every detail of the summit's final event was perfect. She wore her signature navy blazer, her hair tied neatly in a bun, exuding an air of professionalism that masked her inner turmoil. Ethan stood at the back of the room, unnoticed, watching her. She moved with purpose, her voice calm but firm as she gave instructions. She had always been strong, but there was a new edge to her now, a resilience that both impressed and unsettled him. He couldn't keep avoiding the truth. Amelia had a life now, one he knew nothing about, and for the first time, he realized he didn't just want answers, he needed them. Later that evening, Ethan waited outside the hotel, pacing. When Amelia finally emerged, she stopped short at the sight of him. "What are you doing here?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Amelia, please, just give me 5 minutes," Ethan pleaded. Her first instinct was to walk away, but something in his voice made her pause. With a resigned sigh, she said, "Fine, 5 minutes." They found a quiet spot near the fountain in the hotel courtyard. Ethan hesitated before speaking, unsure of where to start. "I've spent years thinking about you," he began. "About what I did. I was a coward, Amelia. I thought I was protecting you by leaving, but I was just protecting myself." Amelia's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing. "You think that's what I needed to hear? An admission of guilt years too late?" "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Ethan said quickly. I need to understand. How did you move on? What happened after I left?" Amelia let out a bitter laugh. "You want to know what happened? I struggled, Ethan. I worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over my head, and then I found out I was pregnant." Ethan's eyes widened, his breath catching in his throat. "Pregnant?" "Yes, Ethan," Amelia said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I was pregnant. With your son." The words hit him like a freight train. He stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. "My son?" Amelia nodded, tears welling up in her eyes despite her best efforts to stay composed. "His name is Jamie. He's 8 years old now, and he doesn't know you exist." Ethan felt his knees weaken. He ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. "Why didn't you tell me?" "You left, Ethan," she snapped. "You made it clear I wasn't part of your plans. Why would I chase after someone who didn't want us?" "I didn't know," Ethan whispered, his voice thick with regret. "And what would you have done if you did?" Amelia challenged. "Would you have stayed? Or would you have still walked away?" Ethan didn't have an answer. The revelation of Jamie's existence weighed heavily on Ethan. He spent the next day in a daze, barely paying attention to the summit's proceedings. All he could think about was the son he had never met, the life he had missed out on. That evening, he knocked on Amelia's office door. When she opened it, her expression was wary but resigned. "What now, Ethan?" "I want to meet him," Ethan said, his voice firm. Amelia blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" "I want to meet Jamie," he repeated. "He's my son, Amelia. I deserve to know him." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You don't get to make demands. You don't get to just walk back into our lives like nothing happened." "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," Ethan said, his tone desperate. "But I want to be there for him now. Please, Amelia, let me at least try." Amelia stared at him, torn. Part of her wanted to shut the door in his face, to protect the life she had worked so hard to build. But another part of her, the part that remembered the man she had once loved, hesitated. "Fine," she said finally, "but on my terms." Ethan nodded, relief washing over him. "Thank you." A week later, Ethan found himself standing outside Amelia's modest home. His heart pounded as she opened the door, leading him inside. "Jamie, there's someone here to meet you," Amelia called out. A moment later, a boy with dark hair and piercing blue eyes emerged from the living room. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Jamie was the spitting image of him at that age. "Jamie, this is Ethan," Amelia said, her voice faltering slightly. Jamie looked up at Ethan, his expression curious but cautious. "Hi," he said simply. Ethan crouched to Jamie's level, his voice soft. "Hi, Jamie. It's nice to meet you." As Jamie studied him, Ethan felt a mix of emotions: joy, guilt, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. "I like your tie," Jamie said finally, breaking the tension. Ethan smiled, his heart swelling. "Thanks, buddy. Maybe I'll let you borrow it one day." Amelia watched from the doorway, her emotions a whirlwind. She didn't know what the future held from here. The first meeting between Ethan and Jamie marked the beginning of a delicate, uncharted journey. For Jamie, Ethan was a fascinating stranger with stories to tell and questions to answer. For Ethan, Jamie was a revelation, a living, breathing connection to a life he had walked away from. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of cautious introductions and awkward attempts to bond. Amelia insisted on being present for every meeting, her protective instincts on high alert. Ethan, understanding her wariness, respected her boundaries, even as he yearned for a deeper connection with his son. One Saturday afternoon, Ethan took Jamie to a local science museum. It was Jamie's favorite place, and his excitement was palpable as they wandered through the exhibits. "Do you know how rockets work?" Jamie asked, tugging at Ethan's sleeve as they stood before a towering replica. "A little," Ethan admitted, "but I bet you can teach me." Jamie grinned, launching into a detailed explanation that left Ethan both impressed and amused. "You're really smart, Jamie," Ethan said, ruffling his hair. Jamie beamed. "Mom says I can be anything I want when I grow up, even an astronaut." "She's right," Ethan said softly, his heart aching with pride and regret. Meanwhile, Amelia observed from a distance, her emotions a tangled mix of hope and fear. She couldn't deny the joy in Jamie's eyes when he was with Ethan, but she also couldn't forget the pain of Ethan's departure. Could she trust him to stay this time? That evening, as they sat in her living room after dropping Jamie off at a friend's house, Amelia voiced her concerns. "Ethan, I need to know what your intentions are," she said, her tone firm. "You can't just show up, spend a few weeks with Jamie, and then disappear again." "I'm not going anywhere," Ethan said, his voice steady. "I want to be a part of his life, Amelia, for good." Her eyes searched his, looking for any sign of doubt or dishonesty. "And what about us?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken feelings. "I don't know," Ethan admitted, "but I want to try, if you'll let me." Amelia looked away, her heart pounding. She had spent years building a life without him, and the thought of letting him back in was terrifying. But as much as she tried to deny it, a part of her still cared for him. Ethan's determination to prove himself extended beyond his relationship with Jamie. He began taking steps to integrate himself into their lives, from attending Jamie's school events to helping with his homework. One evening, as Ethan and Jamie worked on a science project together, Jamie asked a question that caught Ethan off guard. "Ethan, how come you weren't here when I was little?" Ethan froze, glancing at Amelia, who was sitting nearby. Her expression was unreadable. "I made a mistake, Jamie," Ethan said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't realize what I was leaving behind. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere again. I promise." Jamie nodded slowly, his young mind processing the words. "Okay," he said simply, before returning to his project. Amelia's eyes softened as she watched them. For the first time, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, Ethan was sincere. But not everything was smooth sailing. Liam, who had been a constant source of support for Amelia over the years, wasn't convinced of Ethan's intentions. "You're letting him back in too easily," Liam said one evening, as he and Amelia talked over coffee. "It's not about me," Amelia replied. "It's about Jamie. He deserves to know his father." "And what about you?" Liam pressed. "What happens if he hurts you again?" Amelia didn't have an answer. She appreciated Liam's concern, but she also knew that this was a decision only she could make. One evening, Ethan invited both Amelia and Jamie to dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant. It was a small gesture, but it felt significant, a step toward rebuilding trust. As they ate, Jamie chatted animatedly about school and his upcoming soccer game. Ethan listened intently, occasionally glancing at Amelia, who seemed more relaxed than he had seen her in years. After dinner, as they walked to the car, Jamie held Ethan's hand. "This was fun," he said. Ethan smiled, his heart swelling. "I'm glad, buddy." Amelia watched them, her walls beginning to crumble. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to move forward. The more time Ethan spent with Jamie, the more he realized what he had missed. He was determined not to waste another moment. But earning Amelia's trust would be a different challenge, one that required more than just words. Ethan's efforts to reconnect with Jamie and Amelia were slowly paying off. Jamie had warmed to him, and Amelia, though cautious, was letting her guard down. Yet just as things seemed to be falling into place, the shadows of the past began to resurface, threatening to unravel everything Ethan was working to rebuild. One afternoon, while picking Jamie up from school, Ethan was approached by a woman he hadn't seen in nearly a decade, Rebecca, his former fiancée. She looked as polished as ever, her sharp suit and confident stride exuding the same arrogance as before. Ethan met Rebecca at a business event, where her charm and beauty immediately captivated him. She was confident, alluring, and present when things with Amelia fell apart. Drawn to her attention and the excitement she offered, Ethan took a liking to her, believing Rebecca could fill the emptiness he felt. However, as time passed, he realized Rebecca's manipulative nature, her need for control and self-interest, slowly became clear. The initial allure faded, and Ethan understood that no matter how much he sought validation from her, Rebecca could never truly fill the void in his heart. "Ethan Grayson," Rebecca said, her tone laced with mockery and surprise. "I thought I spotted you." Ethan stiffened, glancing at Jamie, who was busy admiring a poster on the school's bulletin board. "Rebecca," he said curtly, "what are you doing here?" "I'm in town for a conference," she replied, her eyes narrowing as she studied him. "And you? Playing dad now, are we?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "This isn't the time or place," Rebecca smirked. "Oh, I'm not judging. I just find it fascinating. You disappeared so suddenly, and now here you are, playing house with your little family." Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I have nothing to say to you, Rebecca. Leave us alone." But as she walked away, her words lingered. Rebecca had always been calculating, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that she would find a way to interfere. That evening, Ethan told Amelia about the encounter. "Rebecca's here?" Amelia said, her expression darkening. "What does she want?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "But I don't trust her. She's the type to stir up trouble just because she can." Amelia crossed her arms, her protective instincts flaring. "If she tries to hurt Jamie, so help me." "She won't," Ethan said firmly. "I won't let her." Despite his assurances, Amelia couldn't shake the unease that settled in her chest. Rebecca had been a ghost in their relationship, a constant reminder of the life Ethan had chosen over her. And now, she was here, threatening the fragile peace they had worked so hard to build. Rebecca's meddling began subtly, a chance encounter with Liam at a networking event, where she dropped hints about Ethan's past, and an anonymous tip to a local journalist about Ethan's scandalous disappearance years ago, when a tabloid published a story titled, "Reformed Millionaire Reunites with Forgotten Family." Amelia's phone was flooded with messages. The article painted an unflattering picture of their situation, insinuating that Ethan's motives were anything but genuine. "Did you know about this?" Amelia demanded, tossing the magazine onto Ethan's desk. "I had nothing to do with it," Ethan said, his frustration evident. "Rebecca's trying to sabotage me. Us." Amelia's eyes flashed. "Well, it's working. People are talking, Ethan. Jamie's teachers, the parents at his school. It's humiliating." "I'll fix this," Ethan said, his voice resolute. "I promise." Ethan confronted Rebecca at her hotel, his patience worn thin. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded. Rebecca leaned against the doorframe, her smile cold and calculating. Because I can, Ethan. You left me humiliated. Did you think I'd let you live happily ever after without any consequences? This isn't just about me, Ethan said, his voice low and dangerous. You're hurting Amelia. You're hurting Jamie. Rebecca's smirk faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. Collateral damage. Ethan stepped closer, his eyes blazing. Stay away from them, Rebecca, or I'll make sure you regret it. Rebecca's expression hardened. You don't scare me, Ethan, but I'll give you some advice. Clean up your mess before it ruins everything you're trying to build. Back home, Ethan and Amelia worked together to contain the fallout. They issued a statement denying the tabloid's claims and emphasized their focus on Jamie's well-being. Through it all, Liam remained a steady presence, offering Amelia support even as he struggled with his own feelings. You know I'll always be here for you, right? Liam said one evening. I know, Amelia replied, her voice soft. But this is something I have to handle with Ethan, for Jamie's sake. Despite the challenges, Ethan refused to back down. He reached out to his former business contacts, leveraging his influence to discredit the tabloid and expose Rebecca's involvement. When the truth came to light, Rebecca's credibility was shattered, and the story lost its momentum. But the damage had been done. Amelia, exhausted from the ordeal, sat with Ethan on her porch one evening. I don't know if we can keep doing this, she admitted. Every time I start to trust you, something happens to remind me why I shouldn't. I know, Ethan said quietly. But I'm not giving up. Not on you, not on Jamie. Amelia looked at him, her eyes searching his. I want to believe you. I do. But you need to understand, this isn't just about us anymore. It's about Jamie, and I won't let anyone hurt him. I understand, Ethan said, his voice firm. And I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm here to stay. The fallout from Rebecca's schemes had left deep scars, but Ethan wasn't about to let his second chance slip away. He spent the next several months proving his commitment, not just to Amelia, but to Jamie. Slowly, the pieces of their fractured lives began to align, but the path to redemption was far from smooth. Ethan started small, focusing on Jamie. He made it a priority to attend every soccer game, school play, and parent-teacher meeting. Over time, Jamie began seeking him out more, sharing his dreams, and even asking for advice. One rainy evening, Jamie came to Ethan with a question that stopped him in his tracks. Do you think I'll ever be as brave as you? Jamie asked, fiddling with the hem of his shirt. Ethan knelt down to meet his son's eyes. Jamie, you're already braver than I ever was. You've faced so much with strength and kindness. That's real courage. Jamie smiled, his cheeks flushing. Thanks, Ethan. You can call me Dad, you know, Ethan said softly. Jamie hesitated, then nodded. Okay, Dad. The word was like a balm for Ethan's soul, a small but significant victory in the journey to reconnect with his son. Amelia, meanwhile, watched Ethan's transformation with cautious optimism. He was present, reliable, and, most importantly, genuine. But her heart remained guarded, weighed down by the memories of his past betrayal. One evening after Jamie had gone to bed, Ethan and Amelia sat on the porch, the soft hum of cicadas filling the air. You've been incredible with Jamie, Amelia said, breaking the silence. He's happier than I've seen him in years. Ethan looked at her, his expression earnest. That means everything to me. But what about us, Amelia? Can you ever forgive me? She sighed, looking out into the darkness. Forgiveness isn't the issue, Ethan. It's trust. I need to know that if I let you back into my life, you won't walk away again. I won't, Ethan said firmly. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Amelia's eyes filled with tears, her walls starting to crumble. I want to believe you. I really do. Then let me prove it, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Day by day, step by step. Just give me a chance. Ethan's chance came sooner than expected. Jamie's soccer team made it to the championship, and the final game was set to be the biggest event of the season. Amelia, Ethan, and even Liam came to cheer him on. As the game progressed, Jamie scored the winning goal in the final minutes, sealing the victory. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Jamie ran straight to Ethan, throwing his arms around him. "We did it, Dad!" Jamie exclaimed, his face glowing with pride. Ethan hugged him tightly, his heart swelling. "You were amazing out there, Jamie. I'm so proud of you." Amelia watched from a distance, her emotions swirling. Seeing Ethan and Jamie together, she realized how much her son had gained by having his father back in his life. Later that night, after the celebration had died down, Ethan found Amelia sitting in the kitchen, a cup of tea in her hands. "You've changed," she said quietly. Ethan nodded. "I had to. For Jamie. For you." She looked at him, her eyes searching his. "I'm still scared, Ethan. Scared that if I let myself believe in this, it'll all fall apart." "It won't," he said, stepping closer. "I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to you if I have to." For a long moment she was silent. Then, with a shaky breath, she reached for his hand. "Okay," she said. "We'll try." The months that followed were a time of healing and rebuilding. Ethan and Amelia worked together to create a stable, loving environment for Jamie. They attended counseling sessions to address their past and build a foundation for their future. Liam, though initially reluctant, stepped back gracefully, realizing that Amelia's happiness lay with Ethan. "You're a lucky man," Liam said to Ethan one day. "Don't mess this up." "I won't," Ethan promised. On Jamie's 9th birthday, the three of them celebrated with a small party at the park. As Jamie blew out the candles on his cake, Ethan and Amelia stood side by side, their hands intertwined. For the first time in years, Amelia felt a sense of peace. They weren't perfect, and their journey was far from over, but they were a family. A real, imperfect, beautiful family. As the sun set over the park, Ethan looked at Amelia and Jamie, his heart full. He had been given a second chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. "Thank you," he whispered to Amelia. "For what?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "For letting me come back," he said. "For giving me a chance to be the man you and Jamie deserve." Amelia smiled, her eyes shimmering with tears. "We're not there yet, Ethan, but we're getting closer." And for the first time, Ethan truly believed they would make it. The peace that had settled over Ethan, Amelia, and Jamie was fragile, like a delicate flower in bloom. Their new life, so full of hope and possibilities, felt like something that could easily be destroyed with the wrong move. Ethan knew this better than anyone. He had worked hard to rebuild trust, but there were still lingering doubts, and the fear that something, anything, could threaten their fragile happiness kept him on edge. It was an ordinary Thursday morning when the storm finally came. Ethan had just finished his work for the day and was heading to pick up Jamie from school when his phone buzzed. It was a message from Amelia, brief and unsettling. "We need to talk. Meet me at home." His stomach dropped. He immediately called her back, but it went straight to voicemail. Something was wrong. His mind raced with 1,000 possibilities, none of them good. He sped to their house, his thoughts a whirlwind of worst-case scenarios. When he arrived, Amelia was sitting in the living room, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. Jamie wasn't home, which only added to the tension in the air. "Amelia?" Ethan's voice cracked slightly as he stepped into the room. "What happened? Is Jamie okay?" She wiped her eyes and looked up at him, her gaze distant. "He's fine," she said, her voice hoarse. "But She paused, clearly struggling with her emotions. "Ethan, I can't do this anymore." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "I can't keep pretending that everything is okay," she said, standing up and walking toward the window, looking out as though searching for the words. "I've been holding on to this fear, this constant worry that one day you'll leave again, that you'll walk out of our lives like you did before." Ethan felt a pang of guilt wash over him. He knew that fear all too well. He had given her no reason to believe he wouldn't leave again. "I'm not going anywhere," Ethan said, his voice firm but gentle. He took a step closer, trying to bridge the gap between them. I told you that. I've been trying to show you that. I've worked so hard to prove it to you, to Jamie. Amelia shook her head, tears streaming down her face. It's not just about you, Ethan. It's about me, about us. I've spent years building a life without you, and now I'm scared. I'm scared that I've let myself fall for you again, and I'm afraid that if I do, I'll be left with nothing again. Ethan reached for her hand, his heart breaking. Amelia, I understand, but we're in this together now. I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm asking you to trust me now. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to hurt you again. She pulled her hand back, her gaze falling to the floor. How can I believe that, Ethan? How can I trust you when you walked away once already? I don't want to live with that constant fear of you leaving us again. Ethan felt like the ground was slipping out from beneath him. He had spent so long trying to rebuild his relationship with her, and now it felt like he was about to lose it all. I know I don't have the right to ask this, he said, his voice quiet. But what do you need from me? What can I do to make you believe that I'm here to stay? Amelia's shoulder shook with emotion as she wiped her face, still avoiding his gaze. I don't know, Ethan. I don't know if I can give you that. I want to believe in us, I really do, but I can't ignore the doubts that keep haunting me. For a moment, there was silence between them. Then softly, Ethan spoke again. Amelia, I'm asking you for one more chance. One more chance to prove that I won't let you down, that I'm not the same man I was when I left. We've been through so much already, and I'm not ready to give up on this, on us. She looked up at him then, her eyes searching his. And what about Jamie? What about our son? Ethan felt the weight of her question. He had been so focused on proving himself to her that he hadn't fully considered the impact his past might have had on Jamie. Jamie means everything to me, Ethan said, his voice filled with conviction. I'm doing this for him too, for our family. I'll spend every day proving that I'm here for both of you. Amelia took a deep breath, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. I don't know, Ethan. I don't know if I can just jump back into this. I need time. Time to think. Ethan nodded, his heart heavy. Take all the time you need, but just know that I'll be here when you're ready. Days turned into weeks, and still, Amelia remained distant. She took time for herself, spending afternoons alone, reflecting on everything that had happened. Ethan gave her space, but the silence between them was a constant ache in his chest. He could see the struggle in her eyes, the conflict between the love she still felt for him and the fear that had built up over the years. But as the weeks passed, something began to shift. Amelia started to open up again, though only in small, cautious ways. They began to talk more, slowly reintroducing the easy camaraderie they had once shared. Yet something still lingered, a tension in the air, an unspoken question that neither of them dared to ask. Then, one evening, Jamie came home from school with a new sense of excitement in his step. He had been working on a science project, and his teacher had asked him to present it at the upcoming school fair. His joy was infectious, and for the first time in weeks, Amelia and Ethan shared a moment of real, unfiltered happiness as they listened to Jamie talk about his project. That night, after Jamie had gone to bed, Amelia turned to Ethan. I've been thinking a lot, she said, her voice quiet. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. About what? About us, she said, her eyes meeting his. And I think I'm ready to try again. A rush of relief flooded Ethan, and he took her hands in his. Are you sure? I don't know what the future holds, Ethan, but I'm willing to try. For us. For Jamie. Ethan smiled, his eyes filled with hope. You won't regret it, I promise. In the days that followed, Ethan and Amelia found themselves slowly rebuilding the trust that had once seemed so fragile. They took things one day at a time, working together to create a future filled with love, honesty, and commitment. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of doubt, still the occasional reminder of the past, but they both knew that they were stronger now. They had faced their fears, confronted their past mistakes, and emerged with a renewed sense of purpose. And as they sat together one evening, watching Jamie play outside, Ethan realized that this moment right here, was everything he had ever wanted. A family, a second chance, a new beginning. He turned to Amelia, a quiet smile on his lips. "We did it," he whispered. Amelia looked at him, her eyes soft with understanding. "We're doing it," she corrected gently. And in that moment, Ethan knew that no matter what challenges the future might bring, they would face them together, stronger, wiser, and more in love than ever before. Thank you for walking this path of hope with me. If you're ready for another inspiring story, click the video to the left. And don't forget to subscribe. It's the best way to keep these stories alive. See you in the next chapter of our journey.